Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Well, today it has to do with some controversy that I've stirred up with my latest stencil release from over at StencilGirl Products. Now, the random thought stencils, they are just a whole bunch of random thoughts on there. But there is one word that has generated some very angry emails. And I want to address those in this video because apparently some people get triggered by this, and that was not my intention. And I think once they understand why this word's on the stencil, it won't be quite so triggering. So what is this word that stirred up so many emails? And by the way, some of the emails were very, very kind and very, very helpful. And there were some of them that were very, very upset, offended, horrified that something like this could happen. Well, the word that caused all of this is regrets. And that is exactly how I wanted it spelled on the stencil. You see, back umpteen years ago, there was a bit of a tattoo oops. A tattoo artist was supposed to put no regrets on someone, and they put no regrets. Complete typo there, but when it's in a tattoo, it's a little different level of typo. You might have seen the Milky Way commercial where they're having fun with no regrets. And then also too, there have been lots of memes and that kind of thing around the internet over the years with it. And so I intentionally included no regrets on the stencil. That is exactly how I wanted it spelled. Although technically it is a typo, but it's one that I definitely wanted on here. And that's because no regrets to me is kind of a YOLO, a roll with it, things happen, that kind of thing. And since regrets is not in the dictionary, you can interpret it however you want for you. But for me, that's what it means. Now, all of this ruckus, this hullabaloo that came from this word, this led to today's play where I'm going to be making some homemade, some DIY tape, and then using some stenciling on there, and then you'll see how I use it at the end. I'm going to start out with some very plain tape here, and then I'm going to put a whole bunch of color and words on top of it. The tape that I'm using is called artist tape, and the reason why I like this is one, it's white, so that it's nice for putting stuff on top of it. And then two is that the tape is designed to take media. So it's designed to have paint on it or ink or that kind of thing. But what if you don't happen to have artist tape on hand? What else can you use? Well, do you have masking tape? That will do the job as well. Now, if you're looking at these that I'm putting on here and thinking, wow, they look like they're two different sizes, you are absolutely correct. One's a little bit thicker, one's a little bit thinner, because tape comes in a variety of sizes. Both of these are ones that I had, and I couldn't decide which one to go with, so that's why I'm going to do every other one, so I'll have both to play with. You can use any width of tape that you want, and any kind of tape that will take art supplies on it, meaning that you can put paint on and it won't just beat up. And whatever tape you're using, you want to stick it on some kind of non-stick surface. This way, once you've got it all arted up, then you can peel it off and use it in something. What I'm using here, this is a Teflon sheet, and I get it off of Amazon. I buy the bulk package of them. I think I get the one that has, 25 in it, and they're very inexpensive. If you only want to get 3, yep, you have that option too. They've got a variety of options, and I'll have the link down below for you. And there's another reason why I use these sheets, and I'll explain that a little bit later in the video. But you've got the idea. You just fill this whole thing in with tape, put as much or as little on there as you want, and then trim up the edges if you've got some tape hanging over the edge, and then it's time to add some color. This is no regret tape, so that means there are no regrets as you're going through this. So grab whatever you've got within arm's reach and start getting some color on there. Now, what I'm letting loose with here, these are art crayons, and as I'm putting the color around, I know that it's going to smear and smudge a little bit because these are water reactive. Now these actually smudge even with your fingertip and it gives you a nice look, or you can add a little bit of moisture to it and they smear and smudge even more. Now you might have something different. Maybe you've got gelatos or distress crayons, whatever you've got, portfolio crayons. There are lots of options out there in the world. So grab whichever one you've got and just get a bunch of color on here. Once you've got those scribbles, then have fun smudging and smearing it. I thought I was going to use my finger to do all of it, but I found I didn't feel like doing it that way today, so I grabbed a baby wipe. Now, because a baby wipe has some moisture on it, it's going to smear a little bit more than if I just used my finger. You're going to see me grab a whole bunch of colors throughout this play, but there is one color I'm not going to grab until the very end. And that's black, because that's what I'm going to stencil the words in, and I want that to really stand out and pop. So that's why I'm not going to put any black on this until the very end. But every other color is fair game. The next layer that I'm going to put on here is a very fluid white paint. So I'm just going to sort of splot it on here. And as I smear it around with my fingers, you're going to notice picking up some of the color from those art crayons. You see, they're water reactive and there's water in that paint. So that means that color is going to pick up and move around because of that. One of the realities of using something fluid like that white paint is it usually can take a little bit longer to dry when you've got this much of it on there. So to me, that's an opportunity to add more fluid stuff because if I'm going to have to wait, we might as well have some fun. So this is acrylic ink that I'm throwing on there, the last drops from that bottle. The next thing I'm going to bring in, this is alcohol ink, and it's going to go right on top of that wet fluid paint. And if you're thinking, it sure seems like Carolyn's kind of grabbing whatever's within arm's reach and throwing it on there. It's pretty close. That's just about what's going on. The other thing that I'm taking into account is what feels like fun to do. I was very excited using that last bit of pink alcohol ink there, so I'm going to smear it around a little bit with my fingers. Then I'm going to add a little bit of color with some more art crayon and a little bit of fluid yellow paint. And once I've got that done, then I'm going to step away for a little bit. I'm going to let this completely dry before I add the next layer to it. How many layers you add to something is personal preference. I like things with lots of layers. I like it really, really busy with lots of colors, so that's what I'm going to do. What I'm doing now in this layer is watercolor crayon, and I am just scribbling and adding little marks over the entire thing in a variety of colors. And you might be able to guess why I chose watercolor crayons to do this. Not because of how they will respond on here, but more that they were within arm's reach. And that's the same reason that I grabbed these Dina Wakley gloss sprays here so that I could just splatter and sprinkle on little bits of color. I'm still enjoying that splatter, so I'm going to keep on doing stuff like that. Now the pencil that I'm using there, that's a Stabilo woody pencil, and I'm just, again, adding some more marks with it, grabbing it because I like the color of it, and it's within arm's reach. This tape is now getting pretty loaded up here with color, with pattern, with all sorts of stuff going on, so it's almost ready for me to add some words to it. But I have done that thing where I added something wet to it, splattered on some alcohol ink there, but it's really the gloss sprays that I'm going to need to give it time to fully dry before I go on and add the stenciling on top of this. So once I've got it the way I want it, then I'm going to step away for a few minutes and let it dry completely. Well, let's talk cosmetic sponges. When I'm using them in paint after it's dry, I simply cut the bottom of it off and then I can keep on using the sponge so that way the entire thing can get used. But what that leads to is some of my sponges end up smaller than, say, a brand new one. Well, that's very handy when, say, you're stenciling words like this, where I could do it with a full-size one, but one of the smaller ones that have been cut down, those make it a little bit easier to stay right on the word that I want without having to worry about masking something off. Well, now it's time to get some words onto that tape. Now, these words fit nicely on the smaller tape where it just fits on there. And on the larger tape, you've got a little more wiggle room on those, which means you can decide if you want the words to go right down the middle or go on the top, the bottom. I'm feeling kind of everything in the middle today, so that's what I'm going to do for these. You can put any of the words that you want on these tapes. You can repeat the same thing over and over again, or you can make every tape different. It's completely up to you. You have that freedom. Now here on this next one, I'm going to go with no regrets. I mean, after all, that's what this video was all started by, was the controversy over the spelling of this word on here. So I'm definitely going to put a whole bunch of those on the tape during this play. When I was getting all the color on the tape, it was loose, it was messy, but when I'm doing the stenciling for this one, I want more of a crisp look. And there are a couple of things that I'm doing to help myself get that crisp look. So one of them is I'm using a thick paint. That really makes a big difference, using a heavy body paint. The other thing is I'm trying to use as little paint as possible. Well, when I remember. See, if I don't pounce off the sponge much, I end up starting with a whole bunch of paint. And you'll notice that there's some of these when I start them, it's a little bit thicker in the beginning. And that's because I didn't pounce off the excess paint when I got started with this. The other thing is I go in an up and down motion. When I'm doing an up and down motion, I get a crisper look than when I go side to side. One of the things I really love about stencils is how much we can each customize it to do what it is we want it to do. So like with this tape, if you want to just stencil the same words over and over and over again, like I'm feeling the no regrets right now, you absolutely can do that. And when you're working with a stencil with words, you can change up the words very simply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stencil one line from a stencil here exactly how it is in the stencil, and then I'm going to show you how you can change it up. The words that I'm doing here are I hadn't seen this coming. But what if I want to say I had seen this coming? Well, that is an easy thing to do with a Post-it note. You simply cover up the letters that you don't want and stencil the I had. Now I'm going to remove the Post-it note and I'm just going to slide it over a little bit. And then I'm just going to stencil the rest of it as if nothing had happened, so that when I'm done, now it says I had seen this coming. And since there's just enough room to fit no regrets on the end of both of these on the tape, I'm going to get those on there. And now that you can see, thanks to a Post-it note, how easy it is to change the words that are on here, you have even more options when you're playing with the entire Random Thoughts collection. So like right now it says telling your story. That Post-it note is going to turn it into tell your story. And you know, I think the words no regrets would fit at the end of those quite nicely, so I'm going to put it on there. Earlier in the video, I mentioned there was another reason why I liked using the Teflon sheets for this. The first reason being that it's great to be able to peel the tape off of when I'm done because the tape will still be sticky, and then I can stick it in my art journal and a collage, whatever it is that I'm creating. But the other reason is this is how I like to store the tape. So I will actually make sheets of these at any one time so that I've got them in reserve and can use them in my play. Sometimes I put words on them like what I'm doing here. Other times I'm putting pattern on them, or I'm just leaving them bright and colorful. And of course, once I've used up the tape from one of these sheets, I absolutely can use that Teflon sheet over and over again. Now, if you're wondering if these are the same thing as like a craft mat, these are not. You know, you get what you pay for, and these are a whole lot cheaper, but they are not waterproof. They are not paint proof. They are not ink proof. And what I mean by that is the paint or the ink will seep through. If you've got a whole lot of it on there, it will go through to the other side. Now, for what I'm doing with this here, that doesn't bother me one bit. But I do want you to know that these are not exactly waterproof, and they don't protect your counter when you're doing them with art type stuff. However, they are fantastic for making this tape because once it's all dry, once it's all done, the tape will easily lift off of this and still be sticky. This is just one of the ways that you can use stencils. And if you're looking for ideas on different mediums to use with them, ways to get the most out of them to get different looks with the same stencil, then check out my workshop, The Joy of Stenciling. The link down below will get you to all the details about the workshop. Now that the tape's almost full of words, what can you do with these things? Well, anywhere you use tape, you can use these. I really like to use these things on art journal pages. It's a great way to get a quick title on there. So all I'm going to do is peel off one of the no regrets and just stick it right on that page. And now I've got a quick title on there. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've had fun, if you've enjoyed, if you've had no regrets that you spent this time here, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And of course, if you know somebody that you think would enjoy stenciling, share this video with them so they can join in the fun. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.